Nothing rounds out a story like a solid, well-crafted villain, so today we're going to be looking at 10 villain types you can use in your story. The monster is a non-human villain that represents a fierce, antagonistic force rather than an actual character. The monster is an animal or alien-based creature that is bent on destruction and can't be reasoned with. The two important elements to keep in mind for a monster villain are the physical threat and the sin. The sin is the human-based flaw or error that has either created the monster or allowed it to be here. For example, the sin of hubris and trying to play God is what leads to the creation of Frankenstein's monster. And the sin of greed leaves helpless beachgoers at the mercy of a giant shark in Jaws. The force of nature villain is nearly identical to the monster, with the exception that they are human rather than a creature. But just like the monster, they represent a strong antagonistic force rather than a fully fleshed out character who can be reasoned with. Force of nature villains are psychopaths or allegorical representatives of evil and only exist to get in the hero's way. These villains often feel as if they've just popped into existence without a past or backstory and are really meant to represent an idea more than a person. For example, the wolf in The Last Wish represents death, and Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men represents fate. The nemesis serves as the dark mirror image of the hero. They view their clashes with the hero as incredibly personal and represent what the hero would be if they had gone down a dark path. The nemesis and hero should feel about equal in terms of abilities and intelligence, with most of their battles ending in stalemates. The hero and nemesis should want the same physical goals but have very different motivations for getting there. For example, Batman wanting law and order in Gotham and Joker wanting chaos. The intellectual is the villain who prefers brains over brawn. The driving force behind this villain is their need to prove intellectual superiority over those around them. Because of this, the intellectual will see their struggle with the hero as a game and will often taunt the hero with riddles or witty banter in an effort to show their superiority. They will view reaching their physical goal as secondary to beating the hero in their mental chess game. For example, Professor Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes stories. The villain in name only does not possess traditionally villainous qualities and is only considered a villain because of their relationship to the hero. If our protagonist is a criminal, then the police officer chasing him would be viewed by the protagonist as the villain. For example, nothing Inspector Javert does in Les Miserables is particularly villainous. He's only viewed as the villain because of his relentless pursuit of the hero, Jean Valjean. The sympathetic villain is the villain who does wrong for well-intentioned or relatable reasons. The idea here is to put both the hero and the audience into a bit of a quandary, wondering, would I do the same thing if I was in their shoes? The sympathetic villain will put the hero in moral quandaries, making them question their own motivations. An example of a sympathetic villain would be Mr. Freeze from Batman, who commits crimes to fund research in an attempt to cure his wife. The villain with a code is a villain who operates under a self-imposed standard rather than traditional morality. These are interesting characters because we get to see them operating under these self-imposed constraints and see how willing they are to bend or break these. In Pirates of the Caribbean, we see characters operating under this pirate's code and get a good sense of their character based on how willing they are to bend or break these guidelines. The redeemed villain is a character who gradually goes through a transformation arc until they reach redemption. This transformation must be handled delicately, with seeds planted along the way indicating this is a possibility. If this redemption comes out of nowhere, it will completely fall flat. The villain will often have to make some kind of sacrifice as a sign of their ultimate redemption, with the level of how villainous they've been being directly correspondent to how big a sacrifice they need to make. For example, in order to make Darth Vader's redemptive arc fully believable, it's necessary for him to sacrifice his own life for the sake of his son. A villain with a god complex believes they have the right as a greater or more intelligent being to take dramatic action that affects everyone. God complex villains believes that what they are doing is for the greater good and that they are the only ones who can see what's truly necessary. These villains are usually a bit of a blend of the sympathetic villain and the force of nature villain, in that they may be well-intentioned, but they also can't be reasoned with. An example of this villain type would be Thanos from the Avengers. The insane villain operates under a deep-set psychosis which keeps them from seeing reality correctly. The important thing to remember when writing an insane villain is that they must still operate under some twisted form of logic. In other words, all of their actions should still be traced back to some core motivation and not just brushed off with, oh, they're crazy. Norman Bates from Psycho is completely insane, but we still understand the twisted logic that is prompting his actions. So I hope this helps. Subscribe for more writing tips and comment below what topic you'd like to see covered next.